So I just ran a masterclass for some of the sharpest marketers in the game within the Perspective.co community. It's the funnel builder you've probably seen online with ads all over the place. They're taking over. And the people I was having the presentation for are advanced marketers. I'm talking some of the best in the game. They're making $50, $100, $150,000 a month. But here's the funny part. When I showed them what I do with my quiz funnels, it blew their mind. Because as everyone's getting crushed by rising ad costs, watching their conversions take a nosedive, I laid out one strategy that's quietly pulling 20 to 45% engagement when the average funnel can't even crack 10% conversion rate. And here's the wild part. These marketers, they were flipping out when I revealed this to them in the live masterclass. And now I'm going to share this private masterclass with you. I hope you enjoy. And my goal for today is pretty simple, to give you guys as much value as possible within the next 56 minutes we have. So my story, I'll go through this quickly, but ultimately started out in high school, was very lost, not sure what I wanted to do. And then I sent this one message to an entrepreneur named Patrick David. Him and I started talking. I was offered an internship to go work for him directly. This is, as you can see, in October of 2017. So it's a long time ago. And I was going to go work there. I was offered the position. I was getting ready to fly out. Then I get this message in the spring where it's like, hey, I know we told you we could do this. Actually, we can't. But I appreciate the interest. So obviously setbacks came and things aren't as linear as we like them to be. However, what I responded to that email was, let me come out. Let me show you some ideas. Let me show you guys where you can take the company. And to the response was, sure, come on out. So after 18 months of follow-up, I had a 30-minute meeting scheduled with Patrick David on the books. This happened to fall during midterms week. I left school first thing in the morning without telling anyone. I just dropped out, left, and I was like, I'm going to make this happen. But I had no idea if the meeting would end up happening. And the last thing I wanted to do was to tell a bunch of people, and then they moved the meeting or things got moved. So I flew from Norway to Dallas on a Thursday, met with him on Friday, flew home on Sunday, and lo and behold, this ended up into working with him for close to 5 years. While I was there, worked directly with him, helped build YouTube channels, helped build an email list through quiz funnels, which I'll show you guys here today, generated over $6 million in e-commerce in digital marketing revenue, and produced over 500 pieces of long-form content, which became a cornerstone for the brand and ultimately a lot of what it is today. But enough about that. I want to get into the content. So first, we're going to take a look at how marketing has worked so far. And the old typical way of running marketing, which a lot of people even use today, is you run ads, you put them to a sales page or a sales pitch on the landing page, and then there's a certain percentage of people who convert. Now, the challenge with this is if we look at how marketing has changed and why it's time to kind of consider adapting strategy is because if we look at before, I'm not going to go through all of these, but essentially organic reach was higher. Now it's a lot more pay to play. There were fewer creators before. Now there's more competition. People are posting 9 times a day. Like volume has just increased dramatically. Before there was more simple content, simple ads. Now it becomes a whole different ball game. You have feeds, easy to understand, cheaper ads. Now ad prices are rising. Influencer marketing used to work. Now it doesn't. And it's hard to gauge the ROI. Before you could do more targeted audiences, different variations of ads. Now it's a lot more with privacy. There's limited. It's kind of more broad. So a lot has changed in, say, the last 10 years. And as we take a deeper look, if you think of it, marketing used to be simpler. You could spend decent money, spend a little on ads, and still get in front of the right people. People paid more attention to the ads and followed the brands they liked and didn't need a whole lot of convincing. Now, on the other end, everyone's posting all the time. Ad costs are going up and people are scrolling past everything unless it's either polished or really catches their attention right off the bat. So in other words, it takes more effort, more money, more touch points just to get someone to care, even for a few seconds. And if you look at that, Another thing that people talk a lot about is the touch points, as far as like I think it's like the 3, 7, 11, where people need 3 different platforms, 7 touch points, 11 reminders, yada yada. But I was looking at some of the data here, and if you look at in terms of B2B and then B2C, right? 15 years ago, 7 to 13 touch points was the average before a conversion. Now it's closer to 266 in the B2B space. If you look at the B2C space, 6 to 8 touch points. Now it could be up to like multiple hundreds of touch points. So obviously, tremendous difference and increase over time, which leads to a lot of what we've seen. And then if you look at the B2B, in terms of pricings, right? In 2010, Google cost per click $1.25. Now $3.30 on average, and in many niches way more. So like that's doubling, almost tripling of the prices. Facebook, same thing, 5x in the last 15 years. So a lot of things are changing, right? In the B2C space, 88 cents for Google Ads, now $1.16. Facebook, 25 cents, now 70 cents. And so like conversion rates are obviously decreasing with this, just due to the fact that a lot of these factors are playing in. But one thing that I found really interesting was in terms of how does email stack against this, right? With everything we're seeing, that should obviously be more expensive too. But the reality is that is pretty consistent where it was in terms of per dollar spent, in terms of ROI, and conversion rates are actually similar, if not higher than what they used to be. So to recap, paid marketing obviously getting more expensive, conversion rates are lower, you have targeting is worse in terms of privacy and control beyond just broad, and then you need more touch points per conversion. So if you look at it like kind of what's this new way, or what's this alternative way of doing things, the way I look at it is you're leveraging paid media, driving people to interact with a quiz, which now targets intent, filters them out, and it's more indirect versus direct. From the quiz, you can build and segment your list, which means you can personalize your offer, which means you can customize the value delivery, the nurture sequence, and ultimately sell people at the right time. Because as we've seen, timelines are longer, more touch points, more variations, and the personality or the personalization you could do from quizzes is what allows you to kind of bypass or at least speed up the nurture rate that comes with this. But here's the even bigger part that a lot of people don't even pay attention to, and that is there was a study done by Neil Patel, who's a big marketer, and they were asking a bunch of other marketers, what do they value, right, in terms of brands or in terms of audience and paid media. It's like, do you want social media followers or do you want subscribers? And the majority said they wanted subscribers in terms of like social followers, this, that, the other. And when they looked at it, the average audience type for monthly revenue per 1,000 followers was $79. With email, that was closer to $582. So there's a huge discrepancy. And like you can replace essentially like followers with paid media. Obviously, that's going to be even lower in terms of the return. But the idea is the attention on social media platforms compared to the attention in email, total night and day difference as far as those two different components go. I was on a workshop yesterday with Alex Shimozi, and even him, with millions of subscribers and like with the whole launch they did, he said 25% of all revenue from acquisition.com comes through email. So it's insane if you actually really think about it, but it makes sense at the end of the day because it's personal, it's direct, and it converts like crazy. I always tell people this, and they always look at me like, email? Are you crazy? Like, do people even read those? Do people even click those? Yes, they do. And the data backs it up. So to kind of look at this in terms of the different industries, this is one of the things I was looking at too, was what is the value of this, right? In terms of how much valuable are emails to these different industries. So lead gen, B2B consulting, SaaS agencies, revenue, obviously per lead in terms of what you can generate, anywhere from 50 to 500, depending on the lead. Estimated value per month, which is another way that you look at email subscribers. So it's like X you do per month your like the total number of email subscribers should have a dollar amount minus churn, right? So if you have 100,000 emails and every month they should be worth X dollars, minus whoever falls off or unsubscribes on a month-to-month basis. So obviously, in terms of value, $2 to $20 in the space. E-commerce, 200 to 300 per month is kind of the revenue per customer, and per of these, $0 to $5, kind of as you can see here. I'm not even going to go through the rest of these, but to get more specific to like what a quiz funnel system looks like, right? So this is an example of the layout for the whole funnel we did for Patrick as far as what we built out. So there's a simple landing page on the front end. You then have quiz questions that people go through. I believe there's like 15 questions here. And based on those, you have then the determining logic, which then dictates and redirects people to different outcomes. Each of these outcomes have individual outcome pages where there's dedicated headlines, dedicated copy, dedicated VSLs with dedicated email sequences. So you're personalizing the experience a lot more. And the analogy I always give people is, imagine you go into a store and you tell the guy working there, I'm looking for new jeans. And he asks, okay, cool. Like, what jeans are you interested in? What style do you like? What color, this, that, and the other. And I tell him, I hate skinny jeans. I don't want baggy jeans. And I only have 100 euros I can spend on jeans. At that point, he's going to go, okay, process of elimination. Okay, this model doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Let me take you to these three options. And he gives it to me. At that point, I'm not going to go to him and be like, oh, why don't you show me these? Or why don't you show me these? Because he's asked me what I'm looking for. I've told him what I'm looking for, and therefore he's providing me the options based on the recommendation. It's a consultative way of selling. He's not trying to shove baggy jeans on me. He's asking me what I want, and I told him, and now he's giving me those options. That is what the modern equivalent of a quiz funnel is, but online. So how did this quiz funnel do? Like Leon mentions, this grew the email list on the back end to 250,000 subscribers. It generated over $328,000 in revenue, with 200,000 of that being in profit between the low ticket offer that was sold immediately and the back end that was sold in terms of the email attributed revenue within a 6-month window. Now, since then, this list, if you do the math and if you do what's been generated, should have generated another $5 to $10 million in terms of lifetime value in the last 2 years, which is just goes to show the value of an asset as far as it comes to email lists. Now, if you look from a high level on a normal funnel versus a quiz funnel, right? A quiz funnel or a normal funnel is more kind of like you have your conversion rate, you push people in, and then you get the sales that come through. With a quiz funnel, it's a little bit different because you're putting more friction on the front end. You're going a little bit more indirect, so you can target people who are a little bit further out in the awareness levels. And you're essentially pushing people into the quiz. You capture their information beyond just first name, last name, email. You now know their archetypes, their qualifications, their pain points, and their archetypes. And you push and you capture a number of these on your email list. And then they go to the sales page, which you can then sell them immediately, but you can also retarget them specifically and sell to them on the back end. And if you look at just from a structure of a sales funnel versus quiz funnel, sales funnel, obviously VSL or copy, versus with a quiz, it's more interactive and it invites them to join. Engagement kind of in terms of they're going through the funnel, watching the VSL, versus with a quiz funnel, it's more interactive. You see higher completion rates and a much more engaging experience. Personalization for normal funnels are near zero unless you do niche by niche funnels, which I know like Cole Gordon, if you guys are familiar, he does a lot of that where it's basically the same offer, but he has one for chiropractors where he says chiropractors and then he copies and pastes the funnel, and then he has one for dentists, and he just does that for every industry he's working with. But with a quiz funnel, you could do a lot more personalization because you know who someone is, how they're responding to different things, which I'll show later in the training here. And if you look at lead sorting, obviously you basically have unqualified versus qualified. With quiz funnels, you could do lead scoring. I have some clients I've worked with where we've done quiz funnels where you have like an A tier, a B tier, a C tier, and a D tier. The D tier is auto disqualified, but then the 3 higher tiers to various, they can either send them to various setters or various urgency in terms of what's more important than other ones. Data collection, obviously, normal funnels are a lot more just limited on the data they collect versus the quiz funnels are rich in psychographic and preference data. User experience, obviously, same passive versus specific. Trust building, which is another huge component of the funnel. Obviously, most people know social proof, testimonials, this, that, the other that they use. But with a quiz funnel, you can do specific testimonials for specific outcomes to mirror the avatar you're going after, a lot more specific. So if it's a quiz and you know it's a man or a woman, you can then put female testimonials versus male testimonials. If you know they're starting out, you could put testimonials of somebody who came in with 0 and went to where they went. So there's a tremendous amount of different customizations that you can do. And in the follow-up automation process, same for everyone on a normal funnel versus you can customize it based on outcome, based on triggers, based on different components in the funnel. Conversion rates, obviously, depends on how warm the audience is versus with a quiz funnel. It works very well even on cold traffic because you're going of a more indirect approach versus a specific direct approach. With normal funnels, you could do one product, kind of some of the different things. I've ran quiz funnels that have multiple different products depending on the quality of the lead. So if they're a qualified lead, you send them to a book a call because you're trying to sell something more expensive. If they're mid-tier, you can send them to a course or something they buy on their own. And if they're disqualified, you can just straight DQ them, not even worry about it. Or you could downsell them, downsell on the back end. So it really allows you to optimize and get the most out of your ad spend, even though they're qualified or unqualified or really qualified. And yeah, so this is kind of like the big grand scheme in terms of normal funnels versus quiz funnels. And if you look at it, the idea here is you take your top of funnel ad traffic, you push them into your email list or the funnel process, where now you're capturing their pain points, their archetypes, their qualifications, and price points that they're willing to pay. And then from there, depending on the logic, you can then redirect them to a low tier, a mid tier, or a high tier product in terms of which outcomes you want to give them to optimize the solution. And once they get to what I call the decision stage, which is basically the outcome page, or like call it sales page, at that point, you're guiding them and consulting them in a sense of, okay, John, you were struggling with this pain point. You're disqualified. You know what? Based on what you've told me in the quiz, I'm going to send you to offer 2 because this makes the most sense. So on that page, it's like, hey, you're here because X, Y, Z, and here's how I can take you further. So when you're using a more advanced logic like this, not only are you positioning yourself as an authority in the process because it's a much more consultative approach, and you're teaching them stuff about themselves or revealing things that they might not be aware of. So you've already increased the trust, you're positioning yourself higher, and therefore in the sales process or the decision-making stage, it's a lot more straightforward as opposed to opening it up and letting the customer kind of make the decision. It's more so you've already made the decision because you're here and this is how we can help you. And if we look at the back end, as far as kind of the process from like a structural standpoint of a quiz funnel, you essentially have your online traffic where it's an indirect approach. So when the viewer who's scrolling on social media or wherever they're at previously think, why would I visit? Well, because they're going to take a quiz. People love taking the quizzes because it provides them curiosity. And it provides them a chance for self-discovery, which is kind of learning something about yourself that you're not interested in. I know, depending on how many here have seen like BuzzFeed quizzes, which were a huge thing 10 years ago, where it's like, what Disney prince are you? It's like, it's just stupid, but I'm interested. I'm curious. So that's one thing. Once they go through the quiz, they'll learn something. At that point, once they've completed the quiz, you've now captured their email, which goes into your newsletter or CRM. And you've captured data on them, which allows you to guide them to not only different outcomes, but also different offers depending on the structure of what is most valuable to them based on where they're at. And here's the interesting thing that kind of can supercharge your marketing if implemented. And that is segmentation, which segmentation is really the process of dividing a broad customer market into smaller, distinct groups of people who share similar characteristics, needs, and behaviors. Essentially, segmentation is the tactic you can take advantage of by the or off of the data you're collecting, which means that although the whole concept of niche down, niche down, niche down is important, and most people do, having segmentation still allows you to get a better understanding of your customer, right? If we think of perspective, it's a funnel builder. But the reality is some people are agencies versus some people are doing it for their own business, right? If you think of the nurturing sequences from perspective, those could be very different if I'm building for myself or if I'm building for others. There's different things I care about, right? If I'm just building for myself, I don't care that there's an affiliate program and I can make reoccurring revenue and I can add it into the tech stack of customers. But if I'm an agency, and like that's another avenue where I can make money. So even within niches, there's different ways of segmenting it, which could be a lot of either qualifications in terms of revenue, how much someone's making, what they're doing. One could be experience levels in terms of how advanced are you, because if somebody's really advanced and has already worked with 10 different funnel building softwares, at that point, you don't need to go over a lot of the basics because they know them, and it's more, okay, how does this compare stack to others? Versus if they're completely new, then it's like, cool. They might not even know that fast loading times or speed is something that's important. And if you look at just purely on the email side of things, benefits of segmentation, open rates can increase by 60%, if not more. You see increase in click-through rate, which is obviously the first positive sign of selling more. Increases revenue per recipient, which we saw earlier in terms of just how valuable the list is. And it also decreases the unsubscribe rate, which ultimately increases the LTV of the subscriber. But segmentation goes way beyond obviously just email, right? If we look at big brands, how are like the cream of the crop using segmentation, right? Amazon pages, those are e-commerce pages that are completely customized depending on history, what you've done on the platform, what you've looked at, and how you've interacted with one goal to spend more money. Shopify, or not Shopify, Spotify. My For You page is very different from your For You page. It's all based on segmentation and history and the data they know of us, right? What songs we've liked, what we've listened to, what we're interested in, what albums we've created. All of this data is used and then put into the algorithms, which then segments it and provides us a personalized experience to drive up the time we spend on the platform. Netflix, same thing. Different recommended movies, depending on the account, who's on there, what's been watched before. These are the things you'd like. It's all they all use segmentation for the goal to have you increase the usage of their product and stay longer on their platform, which ultimately is the conversion metric they have. So in short, segmentation is the most powerful strategy you can use in marketing to make it more efficient, right? But last thing I want to do here is ultimately help you guys build kind of a quiz funnel in terms of the different components that are needed. So if we look at it, first area to kind of always start a quiz funnel with is what are pain points or concerns your audience has, because this is a more indirect approach. Instead of saying, hey, buy from me, you're going a level further out with quiz funnels where it's like, okay, what is something my avatar or ICP is interested in? And thinking like, what's the conversation they have internally in their head and how can I join that, right? So there's three main ways to kind of position quizzes. You could position them in a mistake structure where it's like, okay, what's the mistake you're making in insert category or topic? Second one is what type of insert category or topic are you, right? And then the third one is score, right? Where the idea is you're just measuring someone's proficiency level from 0 to 100 of how good of a job they're doing. And what I did was essentially I just created an example here. If we take, given that we're here with prospective community. What type of funnel builder are you, right? Now, the positioning of something like this is already essentially narrowing in the ICP without saying it, because number one, if you don't know what a funnel builder is, then they don't really care, because that's really like what the software they have and the service they provide. So you already, by positioning the question, it's now to a problem aware audience, which is what they're looking for. And I put together a couple quick examples here in terms of like the tester, the designer, and the optimizer, right? So what we build with these outcomes is essentially what are different benefits of perspective, right? So the tester is, okay, you can get a funnel up and live in 20 minutes, right? We have these amazing templates. That's what you can sell to the person who gets the tester outcome. The designer, okay, cool. Like, this is the Apple of funnels, beautiful pages, awesome templates. You can highlight the feature they want or value more. The optimizer, right? We connect with this. We have WhatsApp automations. We have email integrations. Like, they're looking to optimize what they already have by building it more together. So each outcome has different priorities and has different sales points back to the same product. So it doesn't matter that it's the same product, because you can just highlight different features, right? You can sell on speed, you can sell on price, you can sell, like, there's so many different ways you can sell the same thing. Or if you have multiple different things, then each of the outcomes can be correlated to those things. Like, there's so many ways of doing this, but ultimately when you're building a quiz, it starts with the angle. Then you build the outcomes in terms of like, what are the buckets that you want to lead people in? And then from there, you build out quiz questions, which basically correlate where if you answered option A for a question, that leads to outcome 1. And then if you answered option B, it goes to outcome 2. If you answered option C, it goes to outcome 3. That just becomes the structure of the logic that you build the quiz with, right? And then here comes probably the most important part, because a lot of people, when they're building quizzes or kind of like any sort of quiz funnels, is they add a bunch of questions in there and they think like, oh, cool, this would be super interactive and it would be super dynamic. But the thing they forget is, unless you're asking for a specific question that'll give you some sort of information about the customer, that'll help you qualify them or learn about them or reposition them, that you can then use later in your marketing, it's a complete waste of a question. Because the whole goal with a quiz or a survey is ultimately to set you up, collect the data, set you up for you to be able to segment and now ultimately control the experience for the user, for the end user that's going through the journey. So a lot of what you're asking is just depends on your sales process. I always tell people, it's like, a good quiz should be structured in a way where it's almost as if you had a sales conversation with someone. So like, if you're asking like, what are the basic needs you need to know about the prospect? Okay, cool. Add those into the quiz funnel to where you now know these things ahead of time, right? Whether you can qualify them or if they're disqualified. So in this case, it could be, how long have you been building quiz funnels, or how long have you been building funnels for, right? How many clients do you have? How much revenue do you generate? What's your biggest challenge, right? You're asking things that are going to be useful either in disqualifying or qualifying customers, or that you can then put people down different nurture sequences, where if somebody says that, well, the biggest challenge they have with funnels is speed, you can then put them down through a nurture sequence, right? Or you can push them to a lower ticket product in terms of what they want to sell. So it really starts with mapping out what's the information you need to know if someone's qualified, if someone's not qualified, and then add that into the quiz in a way where it makes sense in correlation with the positioning of the quiz itself. Now, then at that point, once you have the outcome, you have the angle, you have the questions, you have the qualifying questions, then you start just building and kind of putting everything together, which starts with segmented outcome pages, which are specific for each pathway. You can also do segmented paths in terms of you could have like layers where you do disqualify, qualify, even for the same outcomes. You could do specific VSLs, because now you know what pain points they have, what mistakes they're making. You can speak a lot more specific to the customer, even though like you could speak to the segment within the customer base you have because you've done the segmentation. Same thing for email flows in terms of prompting them to book a call or come back. You could do the same with segmented email nurture sequences. If you know kind of what someone's struggling with or what their challenges are, you can then hit that pain point a lot more and show how your product or service is the bridge to get them where they want to go. And if you look at this from a high level standpoint, here's kind of an example where you have different outcomes in terms of structure wise, quiz angles, quiz questions, and then you have the outcome pages as far as what the different outcomes are, where you can then individualize each of these pages with unique variables that associate back to the original quiz questions. Email sequences on the back end, which again are unique, tailored to the outcome and how you associate with that in the sales process. And then what I always recommend is push everyone back into a welcome sequence afterwards, where now you know that everyone who's completed here has finalized their sales, like their nurture sequence. And at that point, you can send them to another sequence, or you can simply just push them to more kind of broad emails. Now, last thing I want to leave you off with are just a quick kind of a couple CRO tips as far as quizzes go. And some of these are counterintuitive, but I'll tell you kind of why they make sense. So a lot of people always put contact information and phone number or like name all the way at the beginning of quizzes, which is wrong in terms of optimizing for completion rates, because the premise of a quiz is that it's an indirect approach, meaning you're not telling people, hey, come buy, and then pushing them straight to checkout to buy. You're targeting more people who are problem aware, and in the ad or in the situation where you've sent them from, you're essentially selling them the concept of the quiz. You're not selling them that you're going to sell them. You're selling them on taking the quiz. Once they start the quiz, they'll go through it. At that point, they have the consistency bias of, okay, let me complete this to see the result. And if you put email capture on the front end, it's going to be in most ways, it comes out as almost like a got you and a bait and switch, which then is where you're going to lose a lot of people. And I've split tested this more times than I can even count. And in every situation, you always capture more at the end versus putting them in the beginning. First question has one goal and one goal only. That is to make it as simple as possible to answer and as much of a no-brainer, because when you have quiz funnels, most people are going to fall off on the first question. That's just the way it is. But the better your first question is, the less or the more you can decrease the fall off on that one. And when running paid ads into a funnel, always drive people straight into the first question and not the landing page, because people have essentially, when they've been on the ad, they have the exit intent, meaning they've already clicked to take the quiz. And at that point, you don't need to send them to the first page because they've already said that they want to take the quiz, which is where they clicked off the ad initially, which is another huge increase in conversion rate for the quiz as a whole. Last one, obviously basic, money's in the follow-up in terms of sequences, segmentation, and really taking care of them. And the last one is ultimately just don't sleep on the compounding asset you're creating. I know a lot of people who are building funnels, doing a lot of direct response in the agency space and the marketing space, and they completely neglect using their email as a nurture tool. It's all about the first automation, converting them first week, first day, whatever, and they completely neglect this gold mine that they're sitting on if they just do proper segmentation and teaching on the back end. So that's definitely one thing. I hope you enjoyed the masterclass. And if you want to see what a quiz would look like in your business, click the first link in description below to get 3 quiz angles for free within the next 48 hours, or click the second link in description and book a time to chat with me. And you can see exactly what this would look like to work with me in terms of taking over your funnels and helping you build out a quiz for your business. Having said that, I hope you enjoyed the content and have a good one.